Magento is a very popular e-commerce system, but sometimes it can be overwhelming and you may find it difficult. My name is Peter Britka and I am a professional Magento developer with 9 years of experience. Work with me and I'll do my best to explain you Magento 2 the easy way. I do personal coaching in Magento 2 and I also create online tutorials. If this is something that interests you, please visit my website at www.peterbritka.com and sign up for the option that works the best for you. In the last video, we defined new columns in our database in quote, quote address, and sales order tables. These columns should have the amounts for grand total rounding. However, if we finish the order at this stage, you will notice that these fields are not saved into the database. So even though the order has the correct grand total, the rounding information is missing. In this video, I will show you how to save these fields into the database. In fact, it's very easy. All it takes is to write two observer classes, and we need to find the correct events on which we can attach our logic. But in the beginning, let's add a product into the cart and see what we have right now. So add this product, go to the cart page. You see the rounding is 0.4 and the order total at this stage is 22. Let's look at the database. In quote address table, we have grand total 22 and grand total rounding 0.4, which is correct. Magento takes care of these totals by itself because we defined the collector class correctly. But if we look at the quote table, refresh it, the grand total, you see it's 22, but the grand total rounding information is missing. So first, let's work with the quote. Let's look at the core code and try to find an event where we can attach the logic. So go to Vendor, Magento, Module Quote, Model, Quote, Totals Collector. It has a method collect, which iterates over the addresses and calls collect address total and calls collect address totals. It iterates over all the collectors. One of those collectors was our class that does the calculations for the rounding. And after all the totals for one address type are calculated, there is this event, sales quote address collect totals after, which has the quote object and also the total object. And all we want to do is to set grand total rounding fields from total to quote. So we can create a new directory called Observer. Here we can create another directory quote and a PHP file at total rounding. Define the namespace. Define the observer interface that we will use in this class. Define the class name. It will implement observer interface. This interface has one mandatory method called public function execute. We need the quote variable, which we can get by calling observer get quote, and total variable that we'll get by calling observer get total. They come from these keys, so get quote and get total. And all we want to do now is set the grand total rounding on the quote object that will get from the total get grand total rounding. Similarly, we'll set the base grand total rounding by calling total get base grand total rounding. Open the collector class. Just to remind you that we set grand total rounding and base grand total rounding on this total model, which is this total model. However, we need to add one more condition here, because this event is called for each address for billing and shipping. And if you look at the database, the quote address table, you will see that, okay, let's first make sure that these two records come from the same quote, from ID 18. Billing type address has all the values set to 0, even the grand total, and shipping address is the one which has the grand total set and all other amounts set. So we need to add one condition here. If total get grand total, only in this case the code is executed. The reason why we wrote this condition is because one of the addresses has always 0 values, the billing address in our case, and if this address happens to be the last one in the collect totals process, we will have 0 grand total rounding values, even though there should be some. So make sure the rounding fields are saved only for the address, which is used for the calculations, the shipping address in this case. Okay, so this is all for the observer, and we need to let Magento know that this observer exists. So create a new XML document called event.xml. First, let's define the config node, then event name. Sales quote address collect totals after, and define the observer for this event with name Ivritka grand total rounding quote at rounding. Instance will be Ivritka grand total rounding observer quote at total rounding, which is the class we just defined. And that's it. Now clear the config cache. Click on Update Shopping Cart. And look at the database. Refresh quote address table, which remains the same. But if we refresh the quote table, now you see that the grand total rounding value is saved in the database. So we have one success. However, if we still finish the order at this stage, you can try it yourself. You will see that the grand total rounding fields are not saved in sales order table. To fix this, we need to write one more observer. First, let's find the core class that is responsible for creating the order. It will be again in model quote, model quote, quote management. It has a method submit quote, and I will go briefly over the code of this method. Here the order model is created, and basically all this function does is that it sets all kinds of data on this order model. Here, these conditions are important. A quote is virtual if it has only virtual products that are not physically shipped, which is not our case. We are dealing with the clothing, so we have both billing and shipping address, and therefore our code will fall into this section. Here in this part of code, the shipping address data are merged with the order, so everything which is in quote address table is set on the order model, but the rounding fields were not part of the Magento core code, therefore these fields are not transferred on the order. Here, the method just sets all kinds of other data to the order model, and this line places the order. The place order method is further responsible for saving the order in the database. So somewhere before this code, we need to set the rounding fields on the order model. And here is the event on which we can attach the logic. We have the order model available and also the quote model available. And at this stage, the quote model already has the rounding fields, so we can easily set them on the order model. Okay, let's create one more observer class. I will create it inside observer quote directory and call it quote submit before. Again, define the namespace and the interface that we will use. Name the class quote submit before that implements observer interface. Define public function execute. Define variable quote by calling observer get quote, and also order variable by calling observer get order. This time there is only one quote record and one order record, so we don't need to write any condition, just set grand total rounding on the order model, and we'll get this by calling quote get grand total rounding, and do the same for the base grand total rounding. So set base grand total rounding, which we'll get by calling quote get base grand total rounding. And this is all for this observer. All we need to do is to define one more event in the system. So define the event node named by the event, which is sales model service quote submit before. Define the observer for this event named Iritka grand total rounding quote submit before. The class instance is Iritka grand total rounding observer quote submit before, which is the class we just defined here. With this in place, we can clear the config cache, proceed to checkout, go over the checkout process, click on the place order button. Let's look at the database and go to sales order table. This is the new record for the order. The grand total amount is 28 and grand total rounding is 0.4. Let's look at the order in the admin. View the order. You can see it's this order, the grand total is 28. However, you see that the amount for the grand total rounding is not here. So if you sum up these amounts, you will not get the correct grand total. We will learn how to change the admin template and add the rounding total in this order totals section in the next video. So this was it for today's video. I hope you understand how to save the rounding totals amounts in the database. As you see, it was very easy. We only needed to write two observers to set the correct amounts on quote and order models. If you enjoyed the video, click on the like button. Also, subscribe to my channel so that you're notified whenever I release a new Magento 2 tutorial. If you'd like to work with me, I am also available for personal coaching to help you progress with your Magento 2 development faster. Go to my website and book a session with me, and we can discuss any Magento 2 related issue you might have. This is for the beginners and also for the experienced developers. If you are new to Magento 2, I also have another online course where we together will build a spam protection module. This will go over the most common customization techniques that you will do in Magento on daily basis. And as a bonus, you will have a fully functioning module that will protect your site from unwanted spam and fake registrations. So go to my website at www.peterbritka.com and sign up for the option that works the best for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.